Welcome to an episode of Thoughts About Feelings, or welcome back if you're returning. My name is Blair, Imani.
And my name is Mychal, Threets.
And we're joined by our brilliant friend, Alyson Stoner.
Hello! Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the show.
We've got some thoughts about feelings. Think of the places we can go and the people we'll meet, the things that we'll see. What do you think? Are you feeling me? Thoughts about feelings.
For this episode of Thoughts About Feelings, we'd like to give you a big old content warning. We touch on things like pregnancy loss, mental health, suicidal ideation, self-harm, etc. We want you to know that there's resources out there, and we talk about them in the show. But if you want to just skip this episode, that's totally fine. Check out our friends at Crisis Text Line if you find yourself in crisis by texting hello to 741-741, visiting our friends at Mental Health America or selfcareisforeveryone.org, and loveyourmindtoday.org. So I'm taking some deep breaths right now because the baby is rotating in my belly, which is so cute, but weird, very weird. But I want to get started by asking you, how are you really?
Oh, this might be the only question we have time for. If I'm going to be very transparent, last night, I traveled back to the city and I didn't get to sleep till a very late hour. And my body said, I think we are depleted. I actually haven't taken a day off since May.
Oh,
and my schedule has things booked till next August. That is not sustainable. However, I feel many things at once. I feel determined and proud of releasing a book into the world and wanting to do whatever it takes for people to find it. And I feel more aware than ever that my body has a battery percentage, and if it is at 1%, you're going to start hearing probably strange responses to questions because the brain cells just aren't there anymore. So I'm feeling glad to be here. I feel relieved that it's you two, because there's a baked-in trust, which is really lovely. And I am tired, which I'm also aware that you're going through a very visceral experience that probably is accompanied by a different kind of tiredness. So
it is,
props.
but creatine supplements have been helping a ton.
All right.
Not sponsored by any particular brand.
Right, brought
Hit
to
me
you
up. No.
Coming soon.
But I've had to kind of recalibrate how I take care of myself because I do get depleted now differently. Like I can't really go out during the week. Before I was very good for like a Tuesday night dinner or, like maybe brunch during a Thursday morning with my friends. But I'm really like, a school night person. Like I can't do school nights anymore.
Yes.
And it's so funny because my husband and I both got Nintendo Switches. That was like our anniversary gift to each other.
The newer ones?
The Nintendo Switch 2. Again, not sponsored by Nintendo, but we got those, and I was like, oh, I can't stop playing this. He was like, well, when I was growing up, we couldn't play video games on the weekend. We could only play video games on the weekends, not weeknights. And I was like, that's probably a good policy for me to incorporate. So it's also trying to figure out like how to be responsible with the energy that I do have, so I can continue to make money, so I can support the baby that is coming.
That's true. Love that little tech hygiene anecdote. Because my screen time right now is through the roof. How's your screen time?
Well, mine is astronomical. Mine is basically telling me you need to log off.
Yes.
You need to stop, or we're just going to turn your phone all the way
yes.
off.
I'm with you on that.
We also like to start off our conversation by talking about library kid questions. I'm a librarian, so I've probably heard at least 1 million library kid questions. And we think there's so much that they would want to ask you. But I think knowing that you're an actress, your experience in movies, and TV shows. Sometimes they're very direct. Sometimes they will ask the most random question. But I think they would like to have fun with you, and they would just ask, what are your favorite movies and TV shows?
Ooh, can I tell you something that's a little surprising, perhaps unexpected? I actually don't have a TV, so I rarely watch narrative television series and films. I love documentaries. I love nonfiction. I think it's because I played characters growing up and I was on set where make-believe was reality. So what I crave is for someone to just give me the driest research paper ever, and to just tell me what actually happened. Don't even dress it up. Dress down, ultra casual, straightforward. So I think there's a couple documentaries. If anyone wants to watch some Noam Chomsky, you can check out Noam Chomsky documentaries. Adam Curtis has several documentaries, and I think one is called Hypernormalization. Might be worth watching for this time period and what we are experiencing. And then another one that I found really interesting is called The Century of the Self, and how we've shifted away from communal experiences to more individualistic mindsets, but that didn't happen out of nowhere. So it kind of shows you some of these different levers that were pulled.
Very nice.
I'm like, who's the audience? Should I give some recommendations that are...
No,
No,
that's
that's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah,
100%
no.
perfect. I have a recommendation that's from PBS in North Carolina.
PBS!
We love PBS over here. It's called American Coup, and it's about a time where this kind of like a white supremacist coalition of billionaires, well, I guess they were millionaires back then, but adjust for inflation, kind of overthrew a democratically elected, multi-ethnic, multicultural, multiracial coalition of elected officials that was doing great things for Black people, for white people, for poor folks, and everything, all the shit hit the fan. It's a real story. But I was just watching that. I did a talk with the NAACP Hollywood Bureau talking about that, and boy, oh boy, the more things change, the more they stay the same. But the beautiful thing is that there's a lot of healing and growth and change that has happened since then. And sometimes we're having to repeat histories. But I also very much love documentaries. I love either like a sci-fi fever dream, like Everything Everywhere All at Once, or the last few episodes of Beef, on Netflix. Oh, it's very good.
Very intense.
Or documentaries, because I like things that are rooted in reality, and I like to be able to like look it up and just go on a scroll and look at the lore for ages and ages and know that it is all rooted.
Because reality is sometimes stranger than fiction.
Indeed.
And I find it more fascinating, the things that actually occur, the things that people do get away with, the stuff that does repeat. And it only motivates me to go, okay, how can we get in there and rearrange some variables for a different outcome? We got to change this formula.
100%. Do you have any documentary recommendations, Mychal?
I don't have too many documentary recommendations. I think with me and my mental health, I tend to just rewatch the same movies and the same shows all the time. But I would say that PBS is a great place for documentaries. There's also an app called Canopy that you can often get through your library card that has so many different documentaries. So no specific documentary recommendations, but definitely a way for you to get access to more and more documentaries.
What are some of those comfort shows and movies?
Oh, you know what's weird is most of them are not actually very much comfort. They're just comfort to me. I grew up watching like Seventh Heaven, so Seventh Heaven is a comfort show.
Classic.
But it is not very comforting in entire content. I am currently in a rewatch of Grey's Anatomy. I'm on season 15. I have watched it several times, but again, not very much comfort. But I grew up with Golden Girls, but also just all sorts of PBS shows. I've been trying to watch more and more, so of course, just rewatching Mr. Rogers and just getting all the feels. We talk about Dragon Tales all the time on this podcast. Wishbone.
Yes.
Movies are basically just anything with Denzel Washington,
Yes.
Will Smith. I love Hitch. That's always a fun one. I think I've had some allergic reactions, and my parents always like to call me from that scene where his face just balloons from there.
Man.
So yeah, too many, but I think those are the main ones.
Oh, such good nostalgia right there.
100%. And, your book just came out, and you're number 3 on the New York Times right now. Congratulations. Instant
Thank you.
bestseller. And we're talking about the media that we grew up with or that we find comforting. And I think a lot of folks are experiencing right now that there's a lot of media that we grew up with, watching different shows. Like for me, Smarter in Seconds is very inspired by Mike's Super Short Show, unsurprisingly. Very big connection. Also jingle heavy, And I think that, your book and, so many narratives that are coming forward are really exposing that. A lot of times we got, joy and, pleasure from watching these different shows, but behind the scenes, it wasn't all, a great story. And so, one, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. I want to check in with your mental health as you've been going through telling that story. Maybe we'll just start there.
Yeah. So I knew that if I were to move forward with a project like this, it would require not only revisiting and writing about all of these experiences, but also this process of talking about them every single day and often answering the same questions, but to someone new who has yet to read or listen to the book. And so it's a lot of context laying for folks. And most of the time with the documentaries, you're only presented a certain version of the story that ends up being entertaining for the moment, but it doesn't necessarily disrupt your understanding of the topic enough that you feel compelled to get involved and do something about it. So I thought, okay, I don't really need to tell my story just to be heard myself. That's something I can do in therapy or with my community. And I know it seems ironic that I'm here with a microphone in hand, with a camera filming, to say that I don't really look for opportunities to publicize my life anymore. However, I also recognize if I walk away before I provide this part of the perspective that's been missing in the public, in my understanding of life, it's a disservice, not only to current and future generations of child performers, but also to the audience at home. And I have some faith in humanity that when people know more, they will respond with different kinds of reflections. And that's what I'm seeing. And it's so powerful that in some ways I'm hoping to write a book that is genre ending, that it becomes the last book of its kind that has to be written because it lets you know everything you need to know for us to go, something needs to change. So it's a lot to talk about for sure. But some beautiful elements are that I think some people show up wanting to just learn about what happened on the sets. And yes, those juicy, intimate details from the projects growing up, Disney shows, Nickelodeon shows, Cheaper by the Dozen, etc., are in there. And I tackle so many other topics and themes related to discovering your sexuality, related to family dynamics, related to healing journeys, unpacking the cultural myths that shape all of us around gender and beauty and this and that and the other. So I think people might show up for one thing, but then find a lot more substance. And usually the reviews focus on that part. And that is like, as someone who is an educator and a mental health practitioner, I'm like, yes.
You get it.
This was the intention. So I'm moved. I'm tired. I'm a little nervous. And it's really vulnerable that people are actually holding your life in their hands. And they can say, think, share whatever they want to about it. That fear of being misunderstood or misrepresented is just something I had to kind of say, okay, I'm going to do it anyway. And as much as I don't want to see another headline with my name as former kid actor, now blah, 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 as much as I would love for that to say founder, CEO of Movement Genius, and certified mental health coordinator on sets, and New York Times bestselling author, I know that I can't control all of it. I'm just hoping that this can sort of be like the definitive statement about the past, and now let us proceed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You reveal so much about your thoughts about feelings in your book. It's so powerful. I'm reading your book right now, and I just say, yes, I was saying, I'm so excited that you're still alive. I'm so honored to exist at the same time as you. And again, I am reading your book, and I will be honest, I am only halfway through your book.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you why. I'm only halfway through because I like to, if possible, since you also narrated your book for the audiobook, whenever possible, I like to read the physical book and also listen to the audiobook at the exact same time. So I ordered your book very, very early, but I put it on hold through Libby, through the library.
Okay.
And when I put it on hold, there was a 5-week wait to get your book, which meant that automatically libraries had to order more and more copies of your book
Wow.
in order to keep up with the demand.
Whoa.
So I'm not gonna pull up my phone, but my phone I think has probably anywhere from 8 to 13 library cards attached to it. And
Whoa.
when you do that, sorry for all the library nerding.
This is
but-
great.
Going
I'm like,
more.
this is such a flex. Tell me more. 8 to 13 library cards.
But when it does that, it automatically picks a library that's going to be fastest for me to get the book at it. So the fastest I could get your book through Libby was 5 weeks. So that's
Wow.
why I'm here. So all that to say is, how do you feel about so many people waiting anxiously to read your book? Their library people, their bookstore people, and just that's something that you've done. Did you ever think that your book child would be able to do this for people?
I'm going to give you a simple and a complicated answer. The simple answer is I am amazed at what you just shared, by what you just shared. And I also know, to peel back the curtain so everyone knows the real deal, behind the scenes in the publishing world, with marketing and all of the calls to action that we see every time we open our phones, I knew that it was going to take a lot of strategy and, frankly, a lot of my own investing money, time, energy, resources to try and figure out how to cut through the noise in a way where people could learn about it. So I have to give a shout out to the fact that I had a publicity team, and they have taken care of major campaigns before. And I had, a manager. I had a literary agent who has had previous best-selling authors, works with best-selling authors. And so I was listening and absorbing and meticulously trying to prepare so that we could set it up for this kind of response. So it's not, it's not surprising from a mechanical standpoint, but as an artist and a human who's if you've ever tried to jumpstart your own thing, if you've ever tried to self-produce something or deliver a product and a service, I can tell you every other effort before this book has felt like I'm given way more than I'm seeing returned.
Yes.
And I don't have money to show for the effort. I don't have notoriety, whatever the metrics are. So this feels markedly different. It's a privilege to have been able to assemble a great team to execute. We have a specific goal, and for it to actually work this time. I mean, that feels remarkable to me. I'm more so used to just being like, okay, we tried, we learned, we will take those lessons with us into the next. And this time I get to say, I actually do have that title, and I get to keep that title for the rest of my life. And I'm going to pierce through the illusion just a little bit more and say, even the titles we know are a part of this broader formula and system where we value certain people and things more than others. And it's been a lot to understand myself as someone who is succeeding according to society. But even if none of that happened, I am still experiencing a success of following through on a vision that felt meaningful. And even though it was scary, I still decided to do it anyway. So I try to hold it all. One of my mentors used to say, hold it tightly, loosely. So you're like, okay, yeah, firm enough to say it happened, but also it is an illusion after all is said and done. And I know, just to name, for every one author who gets to be on a best-selling list, there are hundreds of thousands of qualified, incredible writers and humans with stories who deserve to be on a list, but for all of the reasons will not be on it. So it's nuanced, but there's deep gratitude, immense gratitude for the team. And then I think now I feel fortunate that when I meet people who have read or listened to the book, I get to hear their feedback about their own human experiences in ways that before they would have only ever said I like your character, or I grew up watching you. And now they're like, hey, I went through the same thing with my family, or hey, I'm on the same healing journey you're on, that just feels it's just so much more enriching. So long-winded answer, but I think you got to hold all the layers, right?
Yes. No,
Yeah.
there's so much layers to a story, and I think I especially appreciate you saying that you were scared to kind of tell your story. I feel like Blair and I are always telling people you have a voice to share. Your story is worth listening to. I think for a lot of people, even if it's depending on their experience, their background, it still is scary to tell your own story, to talk about
Yes.
yourself, and for you to be vulnerable and just share all aspects of your life is just so impressive and so extraordinary.
I don't know why I did it. I know exactly why I did it, and I don't know why I did it. That's
Well,
how
I'm
it
so
feels.
glad you did because I had the honor of being able to read it early, and I thank you so much for that. And I love
And
you so
giving
much.
a blurb on the back
Happy to
cover.
do it. If anyone needs a blurb because you wrote a book, let me know. I'm happy to read it and
I
support.
mean, let me highlight you for a second. That makes a difference. Like, you're a credible, respected writer, and so the fact that you would say, okay, I'll put my name on the back cover of this, like, I appreciate that, and it helps other people believe that this is worth reading. So
And it's part of that ecosystem you were talking about, of like all these different systems and how they come into play. We've had so many people on the show, folks like Tony Weaver Jr., who we had in the first episode, who were talking about how
Tony.
Yes, Tony's amazing, and I love how we all know each
I
other.
know, it's nuts.
I feel like we're all coworkers in this space. But the lessons that you provide are so necessary. Even as you talk about, being on the bestseller list, you're still breaking it down, and I really appreciate that about you. One of the things that I learned from this book, and that really, informed a lot of conversations I've had with my husband as we bring this baby into the world, is privacy of children, and making sure that we're going against this very commercialized growing up in public that happens now, because it used to be the case where if you were growing up in public, you had to be on a television show or you had to be the president's daughter or something like this. And now there's so many family vlogging channels that you were just talking about before we started, recording. And we're really adamant about a few things. We're not going to share our baby's name. We're not sharing the baby's birth date, birth weight, birth size. We're not sharing so many different aspects, like even being pregnant. I haven't been nobody knows how many weeks I am except my OBGYN and my husband and my mom. But anyway, trying to keep things offline, and then also not sharing our child's face even beforehand. And you're part of a coalition called Don't Click Kids. And I'd love if you could talk about how you could, how we can change the system, because your book is a call to action, and it's such a necessary and timely one about how we can better protect children at a time when the way we protect children is being so politicized and so mystified.
And we're actually rolling back some of the child labor protections right now. I don't want to say we. As a country, we're seeing that happen, and I do not want that to happen. So you mentioned a few different aspects. I want to highlight some experts in this field. You actually named the title of her book. I don't know if it was on purpose, but
Yes.
You said Growing Up in Public. That's the name of a book by Dr. Devorah Heitner. And she talks about techniques and ways to have conversations with your young one about coming from more of a mentorship perspective, as opposed to just saying, absolutely do not get on your phone, or you can have whatever you want with your phone. It becomes a conversation where you can explore these ideas together at developmentally appropriate levels, depending on how old your child is. And then Leah Plunkett is a Harvard professor, and she and Chris McCarty of Quit Clicking Kids introduced me to Uniform Law Commission. Now, Uniform Law Commission is working on identifying which terms and definitions to use in future policy so that when we're trying to protect young people, we're not accidentally including some but excluding others. And we're thinking about what would work across all states and not just a few of them. So Uniform Law Commission has helped me understand that when we use terms like child entertainer or digital influencer, we assume that this child has a knack for performing, wants to be on camera, maybe is in the performing arts, but in reality, it can be any child. So we can start shifting the language that we use from just saying influencer to a child who is a part of any kind of life storytelling service, if their life story is being shared, we can include them in these protections. Whereas, you know how many parents could be like, my kid's not an influencer? Well, but you're posting them every day, and yeah, you did monetize that content. So I think another way to help us start shifting the conversation is to think about two different categories of protections. There are protections that we need in place for children as consumers of media, which focus on things like, is the digital environment safe? Is this tech platform up to speed with protocols that would protect children? So consumers of media, but then over here we have children who are producers of media or a part of the production of media. That's going to require different considerations around work and labor, around the very muddy area of like, is this a family business? Is this corporate? Where does this fall? So when you start to see different bills being introduced in this realm, you can ask yourself, is this protecting a child as a consumer or as a producer? And to recognize just because you voted yes on one doesn't mean that every child is going to be protected by it. So I've been working on hopefully reintroducing a bill that I first introduced with Representative Grimm and Representative McNally out of Ohio. We're hoping to reintroduce that soon. And then there are also some things that I think are still technically off the record that you might see this fall or winter introduced to further protect child entertainers, but also children, young people. And it's a lot to undertake, but something a friend shared with me is when I think about the value of policy and why it's important to be engaged in that way, when we're unable to rise to our purported values of how we think we want to be in the world, we will inevitably have to fall back on the structures that exist. So in those tough moments when the decision is like, this is messy, it's muddy, it's hard to make, if there's a policy in place, that becomes another layer of protection or regulation. So if you're not already voting, y'all, we have to exercise the few rights that we seem to have left, and especially for the most vulnerable among us, which includes little ones.
In the heart of Los Angeles, thousands of children and families face the invisible weight of trauma. Poverty, housing insecurity, mental health challenges, and the disappearing of the social safety net.
At Children's Institute, they believe every child deserves to heal, to grow, and to thrive.
For over a century, CII has led the way in trauma-informed care, connecting early education, mental health services, and family support to more than 30,000 children and caregivers each year.
From Project Fatherhood, helping dads rebuild family bonds, to on-campus community schools supporting whole neighborhoods, CII is reimagining what equity and well-being looks like across Los Angeles.
Learn more, volunteer, or donate at children'sinstitute.org and help them build stronger families and brighter futures together. I want to shout out a friend of mine, Cyber Farida, who does a lot of education for parents about these different platforms, because you're talking about the producer side, I think, is a lot of what you talk about in your book, and then you have the consumer side too, and a lot of the conversations around protecting children and where that sometimes lacks is on these different platforms. And so there's been a lot of controversy over the summer about Roblox, for example, YouTube Kids, all of these different channels and ways that young people get online. And we did a video with Dr. Raquel Martin and Cyber Farida talking about like how to keep kids on going back to school. Like maybe when you post a back to school picture, you have a nondescript background and you don't accidentally dox your child by sharing where that child goes to school and what their teacher's name is and what classroom they're going to be in, what their favorite things are, which makes it very easy for that child to be in danger.
Right.
And just creating more mechanisms to actually protect children. And so she has weekly video education for parents about how to help people do that. But I also know a lot of local libraries are very good at supporting parents and making sure that there is good, what would we call it, tech hygiene practices for young people.
Yeah, digital literacy. I think when we hold our devices, and the platform itself paints itself as a place for connection, we can assume, I'll speak for myself. When I first downloaded Instagram and it was painted as this place for connection, I was mostly thinking of the exchange directly from me to you or from you to me. And I was erasing the middle person, which was the platform, until I learned, the platform is not a neutral presence in the room. The platform has a certain design to it. It favors certain content. It promotes certain behaviors. It then leads to certain outcomes with divisive, algorithms, etc. So when that clicked, I realized it's not just a private exchange of me posting this of my young one to my family who happens to follow me. Now it's all these other eyes in the room. And when you start to think about, I use this image sometimes. Have you ever seen the green screen suits that people wear?
Yes.
Okay, so picture yourself in your own home, and you open the door, and there's a legion of green screen suits. And they come into the house, and they're like looking around, and they're like, oh my gosh, wow, you read that? Oh, interesting. Can you show me your bedroom? Yeah, oh, here's what's in this drawer. That's essentially what's happening when we're posting. Lots of people can gather lots of information about us, but we don't know anything about their identity in response, especially from the tech platform side. So when you start to think about a legion of green screen suits, when you're just trying to showcase that photo in the story, maybe you'll, reconsider, maybe this could be a text message. Maybe this could go just to my close friends. And even that, the more information you have, the more informed decision you can make.
Yes. Yeah, it's important to talk about this information, to have these conversations, because people they just don't know. There's so many adults. So many adults who have no idea about what's going on, that their children's privacy and identity is at risk, because they themselves are just, like you talked about digital literacy. They're not digital. They're not literate. Their kids are growing up with Chromebooks and iPads, and I didn't grow up with it. I'm sure none of you grew up with all those sorts of technologies. It just didn't exist. And these parents, these grown-ups are just like, I didn't know I had to be worried about this.
Right.
And I see it at the library all the time, where people don't even know how to use a computer mouse. I have to show them how to left click, how to right click on a mouse. So they have no idea how to disable various things on Roblox, on the computer, just to prevent them from going to a site where they might get in trouble, or they may go bankrupt, or they may be taken, or all these various horrors that are unfortunately out there in technology.
And within the tech, it's actually incentivized to overshare. Yeah. When you see that there are a variety of services that at face value might support your child's educational goals, something like a tutoring company might be gathering some data, and it may say that it's free, but it's free in exchange for your data. Yeah. Well, if that data ends up later being used to shape your child's educational pathway, perhaps profiling your child in a way where they're unable to be admitted to the college that they intended to go to because of how this data was aggregated and utilized, well, that's something that I don't think many parents and guardians and caregivers are aware of, that this incentive to overshare is baked into the system. So you actually have to proactively face a different direction when you approach these decisions. And I love hearing, I'm going to check out the people you named, because I want to be able to highlight everyone in these conversations. Because people ask me, and I'm like, I'm not the expert.
I got you. I'll send you more people your way. And I think another aspect of that conversation is the role of AI. And I did a video with Girls Who Code, who's doing this amazing, part of an amazing coalition, helping to teach people about AI, and not just AI as this wonderful magical machine thing that's terrible for the environment, but also teaching people the different facets of it, and how do you interface if you are going to talk with an AI chatbot? What is happening if your child or somebody who's in your life is talking with an AI chatbot? What are the risks? And so in the course of doing my video about the risks of AI, that Kat, who helps me with all my scripts and everything, was helping me research, I learned that anything you post publicly online can be used as AI training data. And then I Googled myself, and because now Google has these AI
Oh,
the
yeah.
AI,
quick
summaries, the
descriptors,
quick
yeah.
summaries. And so I typed in Blair Imani pregnancy, and it gave me this whole readout about my pregnancy announcement, essentially. Like, Blair Imani Ali is having a baby with Atlas Akeem Ali, and they previously experienced pregnancy loss, and now they're having another child, and they're very excited about this, which still makes it stressful. And it was just like very, very intense. But it's like, I guess of course it's out there because I did post it, but it just felt so invasive that you don't even have to click on the video to watch that.
Wow.
And it sounds very scary. And I think sometimes what we have to do is replace the judgment that sometimes parents get about, oh, you're having too much screen time with your kid. Because we see that the higher screen time with families tends to be families that have less support. So families who have less access to affordable childcare,
Right.
postpartum care, less families who are single parent households or single income households. That's where you see more screen time because it's using this tool. And then there are people like Miss Rachel who use that screen time very, very good,
Yes.
in a very appropriate and accurate, in a good way developmentally for the children. And so it's not painting everything with one brush, but instead looking at what screen time, and then also arming parents instead of with judgment, with tools and education to be able to make better decisions.
Right.
And so I made a video about the risks of AI, which is also Smarter on Seconds episode. But as I was looking at it, I was like, oh boy,
Yes.
it's quite intense.
Yeah.
Well, because we love with our quote unquote progress in society to call things innovation. And I've been having this conversation just with some loved ones recently. If you're quote unquote innovating, but it's at the expense of human or planetary flourishing, can we consider it to be that innovative? Is it actually that productive? Are we actually contributing to progress? And so, of course, I would love for everyone to take, courses on ethics before they get into designing these tech platforms. But they have so many other variables they're contending with within the job market. If they get hired to do something, the person who's designing the code is not always someone who can just say, oh, I'm going to flag this. This shouldn't happen this way. They're just trying to fulfill their OKRs and whatever KPIs.
KPIs, oh my gosh.
KPIs.
Oh, I'm triggered from my corporate time.
But then also, like, if it's a profit incentivized company, then you're just not looking at things through the most ethical of lenses. So when I think about innovation, when I think about progress, now I'm just like, hold your horses, tell me more about what you mean by that. And when we really do the research, I just see all the signs for us to slow down and see what we can do in terms of information gathering so that when you make your decision, it can be a full body yes, recognizing, like you named, that none of us can uphold our values perfectly at all times given all of the million variables of a day. So lots of grace and also lots of equipping each other. Yeah.
With knowledge, because knowledge is power.
It
That
can
it
be,
is.
right. It can be. Yeah.
If used correctly. Yeah.
Yes, right?
You're both mental health advocates. And I just want to get both of your opinions or perspectives on want versus need. And I think by want versus need in terms of mental health, when I talk about how, like, whenever I've been open on the internet in the world about my attempts to take my own life, my desire to leave the world, people instinctively say, please don't go. We need you here. We need you in the world. And I appreciate that every single time. I appreciate that outpouring of love. But to say, I need you in the world is so much pressure on a person who's severely struggling, who's going through so much worry and shame and embarrassment. So whenever possible, I encourage people to say, I want you in the world. Just to go further with saying that want is like, this is me. I'm a person. I want your presence. I want your existence at the same time as me. And people don't mean any harm by that need versus want, but want versus a need is just something I've been thinking a lot about lately.
Wow. Thank you for servicing that, because I can relate to reading comments that use the term need, and it actually instills sometimes a sense of obligation or responsibility when you might already be feeling overwhelmed with just trying to meet the needs of your own life. And I appreciate you framing that in a way where there is another option, and that if it's delivered as if it's a need, I imagine for some people, it's an attempt to say whatever they can out of a sense of, desperate love and care that will make sure you stay here, right? Like maybe that's part of the motivation of using that term need. And when I think about someone telling me that they want me to be here, I think I actually might feel even more touched.
Sure.
I might, for me, only speaking for myself, I might feel like that strikes an even more core need for belonging, that someone says, oh, even if you don't do anything quote unquote useful, even if you don't fulfill all of these obligations, I still want you here anyway. That almost feels like a liberating, encouraging show of love. But what comes up for you?
Well, I really shared that, kind of, I guess, critique or observation, Mychal, because I've also been somebody who struggled with my mental health. And, when people say, I need you here or I need you to do something, like, I think it comes from this place of, like, I'm trying to express a deep yearning for you not to do something harmful to yourself. And, I say things sometimes like, you deserve to be here. And I think even that has been confusing for people because they're like, well, maybe they've been taught that they only deserve things if they've earned them, and that you just that it's possible. I kind of believe that you can deserve things because you exist and you inherently deserve those things, but that's not everybody. And so I think sometimes different phrases can affect people differently. But I think it's also, sometimes we have these go-to like phrases, especially as Americans or people in the United States. Just asking you even at the beginning, how are you really? Because how are you usually, you're supposed to say good and keep it trucking,
Right.
Like, why are you telling me about your life? Just tell me good and we'll keep it moving.
Yes.
But that's not how every culture works. That's not how it works in every culture in every country. And so I think it's like what I invite people to do, and it's sometimes an uncomfortable practice, but I'm not a mental health practitioner, but I am an encourager of sorts, is to kind of go beyond those like dialogue options. Like, we're not pre-programmed video game characters. We can make up whatever dialogue options that we want to. Sometimes we can, read books and figure out better things to say or talk to people in our lives. Like, for example, my friend Richie Reseda, who's an amazing prison abolitionist and activist, he taught me to start saying loved ones, because friends and families is important too, but I love loved ones because it's like the people you love. That's such a big umbrella. So it's like, talk to your loved ones about tech safety. Okay, it's a much bigger umbrella than just saying family members, because some people have a very small interpretation of family and some people have a very big interpretation of family. Mychal and I are always talking about our play cousins, people who we might not actually be related to, finding out we might actually be related because our families are both from Arkansas and we have the same family last name down there. So that'll be on season 3. But I think
Ancestry deep dive.
Indeed. Maybe they'll sponsor. But anyway, I think that it's going beyond those dialogue options because it's really hard to express. I think first, a lot of people don't know what to say when somebody expresses that they want to hurt themselves or that they don't want to be alive. Because whether it's from a religious standpoint or a cultural standpoint, you might feel like life is the best thing ever and that it's very taboo to express that you don't want it. Some people bring in God, in Islam, there's a lot of taboo around that. But it's uncomfortable, but it's real. And I think it's stepping into that discomfort first. And instead of trying to maybe write it off with platitudes, to really connect with someone a little bit deeper.
Right.
So I like the alternative because it's like suggestion, like maybe instead of this, try this. But then beyond that, like having those deeper conversations with people, like I was, I did have some training. I wasn't a mental health practitioner, but when I worked at DoSomething.org, I was able to train with Crisis Text Line. And they taught us to, say things, which comes off of as very clinical, like, if somebody says, and we're totally doing a trigger warning, but at the top of the episode, okay, and we're going to redo the intro also. But anyway, I was taught, like, if somebody expresses that they want to hurt themselves, is to ask them if they have a plan, which that's what you're supposed to do from a, more clinical standpoint. But it's also a really intense thing to say in passing. Like if somebody's expressing like, I just don't get enjoyment about the same things in life, etc. So I don't think there is one right answer because there's no one way to be. But I think it also helps us think about how do we express to people who we love that we want them around.
Right.
And that even from the conversation of need them around, like what does that mean? And just maybe start thinking more deeply about it. but to also acknowledge how difficult it is, because sometimes I remember this with my family, like with my own mom and dad, when I express my own mental health issues. I feel like because they're both in the mental health space, they kind of felt like they failed me.
Ah.
And then it was like, but it's not, I'm just feeling this way. It's not because you're bad parents. It's just because I'm feeling this way. And so I think sometimes it, one, shows that our mental health can impact the people around us. Sometimes we need to center ourselves in that conversation, so that can be complicated. But we are part of, we're my friend Cami Zaya always says we are each other's. We are all each other's. And I think when people express the need or the wanting, or even sometimes feeling a responsibility when somebody has a mental health crisis, it's just a demonstration that we are each other's.
Right. Yeah. Something that comes up when you share that is, I've done some suicide prevention training, and one of the early steps is to recognize that many people will have some kind of thoughts or feelings related to ending their lives throughout at different periods of time, or in varying degrees for certain seasons, or sometimes it's something that's kind of a recurring factor, and it doesn't automatically mean that they do intend to take action. Sometimes the thoughts and feelings relate to a sense of feeling like you're a burden, or they're related to a specific stressful event where you're really not sure how you're going to get past this experience. Sometimes it relates to craving for such a different experience of life that you cannot see forward in the particular path you're on. So it was helpful for me to recognize that the thoughts and feelings themselves are not always automatically connected to taking action or forming a plan. And so then when you ask someone directly, it can not only help you understand where they are and how to support, but also help them understand and differentiate where they are in that experience. And the thought around asking directly, I know it can seem intimidating. I know it also, for me, before I received some of this training and I understood some of the research and had my own experiences with myself and with peers, I used to think if I ask directly, I might be giving someone an idea.
They might put it in their head.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's from what I understand, and please fact check me, and as we learn more, we can evolve this answer. But the research shows that if you present it in a direct way, you can actually understand more specifically what to do depending on what the person says. If they do say yes, then you can immediately talk about creating a safety plan. You can talk about what kind of things are in their environment that could be removed or set aside in a way so that if they reach a certain point in what they're experiencing, that we're providing a safer space for them to know who they can reach out to and what they can do when it's feeling more intense. So that ended up feeling ultimately more encouraging when I realized that level of transparency can correlate to more specific kinds of tangible support, as opposed to feeling a little bit like everyone is uncertain and wondering what if. And I highly encourage, I know everyone is so busy on a daily basis just trying to take care of life and learn how to be human. But if we are always waiting to have a crisis moment before we learn about what to do in them, it can be a lot more challenging to show up in that idealized way than if we've been learning about it, thinking about it, ways to support ourselves and others, and practicing those things in smaller ways for when crisis moments hit. Yeah. So, 10 out of 10 recommend not trying that deep breathing exercise during the panic attack for the first time during the panic attack. Like, if you can learn about it beforehand, see what it's like to do in lower stakes moments. Yeah, how does that sound to y'all?
Very nice. It's almost doomsday prepping without acknowledging that doomsday is coming. It's
there
like,
we are.
I hope that there is no doomsday. I'm just curious.
Yes,
Let me practice my deep breathing. Let me 5 things I can see, 4 things, etc. Hugging
Right.
yourself, or that sort of thing. So I think
Yeah.
we're with you.
Yeah, 100%. And when you talked about like the doing the research ahead of time, it made me immediately think about video games. Follow me on this.
Okay.
So when you're going on a mission in like an MMORPG, a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, right? Like World of Warcraft, you usually make like a team, and it's like you have the healer, you have the mage, you have the wizard, you have the like soldier. And I feel like, having that in your friend group can be so beautiful. And I feel like we are that to each other in many ways. Like Mychal is 100% the library mage, when I'm like, I need a book for this child, help. And Michael's like, here you go. Except it's just a very tame text message conversation. But I think like, sometimes you have those people in your life who like, maybe you have a friend who does have a mental health background. Like I know that, people are always calling my mom to be like the supporter, especially after the fire in Altadena, like helping people to get in touch with different resources, because my mom has like a social work background. So I think that it's also like not just looking at these kind of more separate from our lives organizations, which can be so helpful and so important, but also to like, look at your friends as a team, as a squad. And I think it can also help us build more authentic friendships too, because I know that for me, having a friend to tell me like, no, like I like you for you. You don't have to perform. You don't have to, teach me anything right now.
Right.
Even though I love to teach people things, but just having that burden, even if it's not something I can articulate outside of myself, just kind of taken off my shoulders, just helps me be more of myself. And I think if we can have friendships and connections with people, with loved ones that help us feel more of ourselves, that's better for our mental health. And it can also take better action in the world because we feel more whole.
Yeah. Can I give a shout out to someone?
Yes.
Okay. So there's this multifaceted human who's also at Connect with Umu on Instagram. And they have all of these wonderful things that you can do, either self-guided or you can learn about in workshops with them. But I was introduced through them to this idea of doing some hard things with your community, one of them being filling out a will and end-of-life documents, things that inevitably I'm going to need to prepare for. And as I get older and I'm interfacing with all different kinds of life events, realize like, oh, I do need to take care of that. But it had never dawned on me that you could have a gathering with other friends or loved ones in your life and go through that process together, where you're able to talk through like, ooh, this thing on this form, what comes up for you when you read that? Or logistically, how do I solve this problem? And so Umu has like different ways that you can actually facilitate these experiences at home or with loved ones. And they also have a bunch of different great workshops. Like if you're also wondering like, how do I create this kind of self-care menu? I'm not sure what to do when I'm feeling like I need something. Like Umu can walk you through that. We had Umu lead a class for my company, Movement Genius. And from start to finish, I was like, yeah, I so deeply appreciate the presence that's offered, and also just this like very interdisciplinary perspective and approach. So shout out at Connect with Umu on Instagram.
I smell smarter in seconds coming on.
It's brewing.
Yeah, like creating a will. I know we're talking, we're just going, we're swimming in the deep end, but
it's necessary.
you named
It
this
is.
Thoughts About Feelings.
Yes.
And we have lots of them.
Yes. No, it's so true. It's something I've honestly been thinking about it a lot recently, because like I get on airplanes all the time, far more often than any person should, and I'm like, what if this plane goes down? It happens all the time. Who can take care of my cats? Of course, my mom will take care of my cats. But all those sorts of things. So those are valid conversations. Yes, they're scary. They're uncomfortable, but they have to happen.
Well, if you want to go through this process together, I'm thinking about organizing a little gathering with some people. So let me know, because I would love to have us feel prepared.
Yes,
You know.
absolutely. That was another episode of Thoughts About Feelings. It was so much fun. We learned so much from our friend Alyson Stoner. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we have some book recommendations for you. They are Alyson's book, Semi-Well-Adjusted, Despite Literally Everything. If you haven't already read it or received it, I'm sure you already have, but just in case. But we also have That's a Great Question, I'd Love to Tell You by Elise Myers, Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson, and Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner.
Fantastic. We hope that you enjoyed. We are so glad to have you, Alyson.
I'm honored.
Thank you so much for rounding out this episode with so many resources, so many ways to support our friends, our loved ones when it comes to our thoughts and our feelings. We'll see you. We love you. Bye.
Bye.
We've got some thoughts about feelings. Think of the places we can go and the people we'll meet, the things that we'll see. What do you think? Are you feeling me? Thoughts about feelings. All the ideas we can share with the fabulous friends and Mychal and Blair. We'll think about our feelings everywhere with thoughts about feelings. Thoughts about feelings.